Right guys, we have a dump of iPhone 14 leaks from a pretty credible source, and so let's delve into it. So the information's coming from Maguire Woods, someone who has a decent record in terms of credibility, but of course, as with any other leak, do take this with a grain of salt. So beginning with the performance, as expected, the A16 is going to be based on the same 5nm process the A15 was based on, and so of course, the year-over-year upgrades are going to be pretty minor, much like of course the A14 to the A15 was. And to be honest, I could care less about the lack of upgrades with the chip, especially considering that of course, iPhone chips for the last few years have been more than powerful enough for these smartphones and what we do on a daily basis. And so the A16 being a minor improvement really is not a massive issue, especially when the 14 and 14 Max are retaining the A15 chip. And actually, instead of giving us raw performance gains, it seems Apple's going to be improving the thermals with the Pros, and this is great because many have complained about the iPhone 12 and 13 series facing overheating issues when doing intensive stuff like gaming, so of course, putting a vapor chamber cooling system in this is going to massively improve the peak performance. And yeah, Maguire does seem to suggest this could be the case. He says that he's seen better heat management with test boards for these iPhones, and that could be due to software but also hardware, so yes, much like Ho told us a while back, I do think we're getting some sort of cooling hardware improvement with the 14 Pro and Pro Max. Now moving on to the colours, this tidbit's pretty interesting because Maguire believes the regular models are going to get green, purple, blue, black, white and red, so RIP pink. But the Pros interestingly could be getting green, purple, silver, gold, and graphite. And while the purple makes sense because everyone's told us about that, but the fact we could also see a green Pro iPhone at launch is a very interesting move because Apple usually only gives us one additional colour with the Pros at launch, apart from graphite, silver and gold, and so it's pretty interesting that no, we could see two new colours at launch instead. And yeah, I do kind of have my doubts over that. Maybe the green's going to be another mid-cycle refresh, much like we saw with the 13 series, but yeah, especially with the supply constraints, I doubt that Apple's going to complicate the supply chain further and give us one additional colour for the Pros at launch. But don't get me wrong guys, if this does pan out, I will be very happy because it's always great to see more colour options with the Pro variants. And by the way, in case you're wondering about the shades for these colours, well, Maguire gives us a hex code for the purple and this actually looks surprisingly good. It's a lot darker than the light purple we've seen in some renders, but I do think this shade really fits with the Pro aesthetic, and I would get this. So yes, hopefully that does pan out, and also we get more colour options with the Pros at launch. And also one more suggestion, but I do pray the regular models come in more vibrant colours, something similar to the 10R colours because I've kinda had enough of the pastel tones with some of the later regular iPhones, and so yes, please Apple give us rich and vibrant colour choices. Anyways, moving on to the always on display, Maguire does agree with the previous reports we've seen through Xcode leaks, and while this means we're going to get a black background and only the widgets and the time and date are shown on the always on display. And as expected, there will be no customization to this, so the widgets on the lock screen have to be the widgets on your always on display, which I guess does make sense, since Apple wants the transition to be seamless from the lock screen to the always on display. Oh, and also much like the Apple Watch, there should be a nightstand mode available on this, and that's going to be great for those of us using wireless charging stands. Anyways, Maguire also tells us how to actually set up the always on display on the iPhones. Essentially go into display and brightness, then display, and then of course, we should see the toggle for the always on display. Now this apparently won't be enabled by default, and that certainly makes sense because I do ultimately think that most consumers might not want this. A lot of my friends using Android don't use this, and so I do think this is going to appeal to a niche audience. Also, I'm sure that battery life is going to be slightly worse with the always on display enabled, and most consumers don't want that, so yeah, leaving this disabled by default certainly makes sense. Oh, by the way, some test builds do have the always on display in a different section, but yeah, basically expect this to be in the display and brightness section of the iPhone. Now regarding the materials for the Pros, unfortunately Maguire does believe titanium's not coming. He says there were prototypes that had a titanium build, but this was ultimately deemed too hard to work with and not cost effective. And so yeah, we're going to see stainless steel with the Pros, and that is really unfortunate. Since do remember, titanium would have given us a lighter build, also twice the strength with a matte finish, and so this would be a massive upgrade over stainless steel, and I do very much hope we see this with the 15 Pro series. And the bad news continues because storage options are apparently staying the same, so for those hoping the Pros with the price hike could also get double the storage, unfortunately that's not going to be the case. And regarding suppliers for these iPhones, Maguire says that yes, the lenses are going to be produced by different suppliers, and this was reported by Quote because Apple's usual supplier was having cracking issues with the lenses, and so they're now relying on a different supplier to produce these new lenses. And hurrah, BOE has made it. They're going to be producing the base iPhone 14 displays, and according to Maguire, they look fine, so yes, BOE has finally nailed the quality aspect of their displays. And I was hoping these cheaper BOE panels could lead to lower prices, but unfortunately that's not going to be the case. In fact, Maguire believes the 14 is going to stay at $799, but the Max could be $200 more expensive at $1,000. And this is the part of his report that really makes no sense to me, because why would Apple charge $200 more for the Max when the only difference is going to be the bigger display and the bigger battery? And do remember, Max phones in the past have only been $100 more, and they've also given us exclusive features like the 12 Pro Max, for example, that had a better camera than the 12 Pro, so of course, for Apple to charge $200 more for the same phone, but of course, in a different size, really makes no sense. And what's more confusing is that Maguire says the Pro should be $1099 and the Pro Max should be $1199, and so that begs the question, why is there a $100 difference between the Pro models, but a $200 difference between the regular models? And also do remember that you could probably find a 13 Pro Max for around $1,000 on clearance, and so I do strongly disagree the 14 Max is going to be $1,000, and it should be $899 instead. So yeah, that's everything Maguire told us, a bunch of tidbits, but tell me your thoughts regarding it in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching guys, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video above on details regarding the iPad 10, and on that note, see ya peeps.